So what was the worst part? Because there's a lot of bad parts here. Was the worst part the price tag, or knowing how much they were selling it for, which those are two related things? Or was it the demos that you had to do? Or was it the training of these guys? Or what? Like, there's a lot of problems with
real
ideas, money folding, hustle smart, dream so wild, turn that grind into a joyride.
This is an episode where we might actually use some
expletives,
some colorful language.
I will send a sternly worded email to them.
So we're talking about resellers, and specifically, like,
love them.
Your startup, should you like partner with resellers? Is this a good idea, bad idea? Where do you land?
It's such a big question, but I am cool to take this on with you.
Yeah.
Do you want to hit me with a story or something to get into this, or do you have anything?
Sure.
Tell me about Chris's sweet life.
So
past life, I guess.
Yeah. So I got a few stories on this, but
okay.
So I want to go back to the early days.
Take it back.
Chris's first like startup, foray. So do you remember the document management software that I built?
Sentry File.
Yeah. Back in like a long time ago. Like I was still in school. I think I was in second year computer science.
Wasn't the tagline? Was that the tagline, software for business, or was that? Oh no, that was for CutCom in general. Software for business or software superiority.
Yeah,
sick.
Right.
It was cool. It was like air superiority. That was cool.
All right.
I mean, we were just a couple of nerds, but it was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Anyway, whatever. Okay. What about Sentry File?
So anyways, document management software. So remember, I built this. Our dad owns owned a photocopier dealership. So the idea here was
our father.
Yeah, our father.
Yes.
But
Dawn.
So they sold photocopiers. Photocopiers had scanners to scan paperwork on the top of all of them. So the idea was simple. It's like, okay, we're gonna like take all the paperwork, scan it into like a database, make it searchable, and so you don't have to store the paper in like filing cabinets. You can.
I remember I did this for a magical summer. I remember doing.
Yeah. So that product, when we built it, because there seemed to be this tie into these photocopier dealerships, and photocopier dealerships are a thing. You go to any city and you want to buy a photocopier, you're going to probably buy it from a photocopier
Canon,
dealership,
Xerox, whatever, because
the bloody machines always jam. And you need people to turn wrenches, and fix them and stuff like that. So there were photocopier dealerships was a thing.
Kyocera.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm trying to think of all my photocopier companies.
Are you just name dropping for like SEO purposes?
Please tag this. So yeah. Okay. Hey, turns out starting a business can really suck. Figure out how to make it suck less with Startup Different. Find it on Amazon, Audible, and Kindle.
But so bottom line is we're like, okay, we got this document management software. It works well with photocopiers. Let's sell it through photocopier dealers. And what I learned through that incredibly difficult process is that the skill set to, sell and service a photocopier is very different from the skill set required to install software and train people on software and demo software,
100%.
That kind of stuff. And
it's like hardware versus software. It's a complicated demo because you have a hardware component and a software component.
Yeah. And like training and, support and those types of things become really hairy. So anyways, went through that process. Where I ended up on that whole thing is it very much felt like, by the end, it just wasn't working well. It was not a good fit from a partnership perspective, even though on the face of it, it looked like it was. But we had to give massive amounts of margin away to the photocopier dealer.
What are we talking about?
Like I would sell it to them. I think it was $3,000 for the software, one-time purchase. It wasn't SaaS type. And I think they were selling
There's your first problem.
Yeah, I think they were typically selling it for more than 10, probably in the 15, 20 range.
Holy shit.
Yeah. So, and weirdly, they weren't
like 6xing the price?
Yeah. But weirdly, they weren't that motivated to sell it, even with massive
Wasn't a big
margins.
enough number in general. $3,000. I don't know. Maybe back then it was a bigger number.
I think it was more like just.
I guess it's like 18. Yeah,
the skill set wasn't there, So they were almost
it was intimidating.
Like, oh shucks, we sold one. Now we might have to actually do something
do the
with
work.
This. Yeah. Whereas like the photocopiers, they knew how to kind of deal with them. Like they could solve that. They didn't have the people that could really do the software piece. So anyways, it went okay. Like we sold the software, made hundreds of thousands of dollars per year doing this. Like
and it's all actually, that's interesting because it's all one time. So your revenue, every year you had to have the hustle.
That was brutal, though.
That's
the
a terrible idea.
Yeah, I know, and that's what ultimately drove me probably out of it, was that we had no recurring revenue, and we would provide updates and would provide free support and stuff like that.
Oh man,
and we were just getting crushed.
You're giving it away.
But software as a service wasn't a thing back then. This was back in the days when you would go to Staples and buy a copy of Microsoft Word one time. You would keep it for like ever, that disc. You would probably use that disc and install it on everybody's computer that you knew with the little software key and everything. Nice, so like
video games were like that too.
It was a totally different game.
But like, wouldn't you charge like a lot more upfront, knowing that you would have to service it for multiple years?
Yeah, maybe, but we were using the revenue from subsequent years to support the people from previous years, like, because we never really had like any type of maintenance fee or anything like that.
All right, sorry, keep going.
That was both like a pro and a con. Whatever. The other piece too was that I usually because it was just a small company, I had a few employees at one point, but generally me had to do most of the demos. So
how many dealers did you have? How many were you working with?
I think 50 or so that would actually be actively selling it.
Like what, 10 salespeople per? Oh, actively selling it. Okay.
Yeah, actively. There's probably about 250 signed up as dealers, but like maybe 50 of them actually sold anything.
Did they all have like territories and stuff?
No, we did. We tried to do like a named account thing, which didn't work. Sick. It was always
crossover.
Channel conflict.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we'll talk about. I'm looking forward to ripping into this. But okay.
Anyway, so really tough situation. So like tried the reseller network there, and just took a lot of wounds, licked a lot of wounds, getting through it. Ultimately, we ended selling that product to another company, and they I think it's still.
I was around
today.
For that. Yeah, it's still around. Yeah.
So, and I hope they pivoted it to a better business model to be able to make some money on it.
So, what was the worst part? Because there's a lot of bad parts here. Was the worst part the price tag, or knowing how much they were selling it for? Which those are two related things. Or was it the demos that you had to do? Or was it the training of these guys? Or what? Like, there's a lot of problems with this.
There's a lot of bad stuff.
You have like 5 huge issues with this business.
So the big one on the pricing, like I didn't mind that they were making money on it. Where I had a hard time with the pricing was that the customer expectations were of a $20,000 purchase, whereas I had seen $3,000 of revenue. Whereas, and
let me tell you a little story on that.
Yeah.
I think if you sell anything for any amount of money, customer expectations are always batshit crazy. And I'll tell you why. I had, as you know, a fabulous umbrella rental business for weddings. This is real, Graham, so heads up. And I had...
You got to explain this business first. You can't just say...
Okay, yeah. So basically, during my wedding, it was like a rainy day, and we were at a beautiful Niagara on the lake here in Ontario, and it was like off and on clouds, and we were really worried. We need umbrellas for both the people and the wedding party. And then we were like, okay, well, we'll get some umbrellas. And we got absolutely raked over the coals because it was like short term, needed them as quickly as possible. I think we paid an ungodly.
They needed to be white.
They needed to be white. We paid so much for those umbrellas. It was like 10 umbrellas for like $1,000. It's like $100 an umbrella. Something crazy. Whoa. Weddings, man. Weddings. So I was so mad about this that I created a business with my wife where we had a distributor of these umbrellas. We bought some of them wholesale. We were then going to rent them to wedding groups and get a lot of money out of the same umbrella. We also did sell them as well, just for what it's worth. So we had basically one customer. It was actually of interest, and it was actually the place where we got married. They were more interested in buying the umbrellas, surprised, because they didn't want to pay any recurring rental costs for these umbrellas at every wedding. So it's not good to actually target the venue for what it was worth. You wanted to target the wedding party, which was a lot harder to find. But anyway, so we did it, and we ordered them, and then we had they sent an order, and we were late because FedEx kind of basically blew it, or I probably picked the wrong shipping option, or something happened, and it was a $200 order. And it was late, and I got somebody super pissed at me over the phone, and and I was like, "I'll give you $200 back." They're like, "Wait, Dave, it's hell." Yeah. So I will just start by saying, no matter what, customer expectations are always batshit crazy. Doesn't matter how much money you can even be working for them for free. I find sometimes it's just like the expectations are weird as hell. Yeah. So anyway, I will say that, but that on a personal level for you must have been mad frustrating that these guys were able to command 6x. 7x your price,
right?
Their wholesale price, and I bet you couldn't raise the price on them. Eh?
No.
So
in fact, they would actually get the deal, and then they would not want to pay the $3,000. They would then say, I got a deal, but I want a better deal from you.
Oh my God. I would tell them to kiss my ass.
Honestly, I was getting beat up on all sides. And like every time somebody wanted to buy from me, it was like there was a price list, but it was a negotiation on starting point.
You signed a contract with them.
Yeah. No.
You didn't sign a contract.
No, no, we did have a contract, but they
Like a
would
dealer
just
contract.
still say, well, I don't know, maybe I won't buy maybe I'll go get a different one and show the customer a different piece of software. And then they would start negotiating on that $3,000.
So
yeah, it was
shitty,
tough.
eh?
It was tough. It was like that. I think that's the way that industry kind of worked. They negotiated on everything.
Yeah.
And
That's the margin.
Exhausting. Right.
It's
exhausting
yeah.
to like every interaction. Well, I just did the demo for you. I'm going to do all the support and you're going to make a ton of money. And now also you want more money. It was exhausting working through them. So like, that's a bad example of working with a reseller where it didn't really work out. Just misalignment, channel conflict, bunch of things just weren't working out. And the other thing too is they would never tell us who the customer was.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is okay.
So
can I dig into
we would
this
have
yet?
people come to hold on a sec.
Okay.
We would have people come to us for support and we would kind of figure out, okay, they must be a customer because they obviously have
They
it. and
have the
stuff like
product,
that.
right? They have the
I
product.
also found out that we didn't do a great job of securing the software licenses. So we would sell a software license key.
Oh, using the same
And
key.
we had some dealers where they actually sold the same key multiple times as well. So like this is a terrible example of resellers gone wild. Not
fair. Not girls.
Weird reference. Yeah. But definitely like from my perspective, I'm like so beat up on it that I'm not a big fan of the reseller. So do you have an example of where a reseller works well?
I was going to say to you, so my old boss, Hope McIntosh Trigg, after we were acquired by Ray Mobile Safety, she came from VMware, and I always found VMware a pretty interesting company. They're like, they can do like an instance of Microsoft Windows running on like a Mac machine.
Really cool. Use it all the time. Yeah.
Called a virtual machine. It's basically a big business. And I think something like 95% of their deals are through channel partnerships.
Really?
Yeah. So I have a couple of different thoughts on this. Okay. I would suggest, and actually we read about this in Startup Different, the book, the myth busting blueprint for your multi-million-dollar business. That it's an award-winning book that I thought was that basically, here's the deal. This is my opinion. I have some data behind this, but it also varies based on industry. I'm just going to have a few caveats here. Different industries, different problems being solved, different circumstances. Most of the time, almost always, you need to talk to the customer. You need to manage the customer interaction. You need to own the customer relationship, and you need to own the process of billing the customer. Are there successful software companies out there that use channels? Yes.
Right.
Okay. Is it hard to get that going? Yes. Is it hard to also get your direct sales force going? Yes. Okay. Is the answer to all of these things. It is always hard. Okay. So for me, when I looked at this, I was like, when we were doing App Armor, there were times when we had opportunity. We actually had a few dealers who did nothing.
Yeah.
But
I was going to say, we had no sales through
literally
dealers.
zero sales. And the process was very heavy in terms of educating, trying to convince them we were worthwhile as a product, trying to get them to sell the product effectively, which they really didn't.
Yeah.
Try to understand the circumstances in which they need to sell the product. Here's the other thing. I have so many, I'm getting totally overwhelmed. There's so many different reasons why I don't think it's a good idea for a small company. Okay. The biggest one being is that like you need that feedback from the customer to iteratively improve your product. Yeah. That feedback from your salespeople is extremely valuable. Yeah. Even if it's kind of like a game of like broken telephone sometimes where it's like, oh, they needed to do this or that. And then you build it and they're like, well, we didn't want to do that. We wanted to do this, like that kind of thing. But the spirit of it is usually good. You usually can identify market trends coming from multiple customers because I'm doing a couple demos a day, or your sales team's doing a couple demos a day.
You're hearing
what's out there, right? And then you can make better decisions. You will not hear that. You are tone deaf to the market when you have a channel partnership. That's the first thing. Second thing is that channel partners are not just selling your stuff. Right. Almost never. Almost never. Because then they're basically your sales force, right? So if we understand that they're going to market with a vast product offering, what makes them think about you? I know you know this answer. What makes them think about
margin?
You? Yeah. How much are they going? How rich are they going to be by selling your thing?
Yeah. They're only going to get so much time to talk to potential clients.
So little time.
So they're going to talk about the thing that's going to make them the most.
Theoretically, they have an ongoing relationship that's like decent with their prospects, their customers, that sort of thing.
Right.
So they've got let's say they do every 2 weeks they do a call. It's pretty normal. Account executive activity is you're going to keep in touch with your people, keep working those deals, finding opportunities with existing accounts and making new ones.
Yeah.
So they are going to have a 30-minute meeting every 2 weeks. So in that 30 minutes, how are you going to get 5 to 10 minutes of that time for them to talk about your thing? It's all about how much they can make on your product. And here's the thing: everybody knows this. So everybody else that channel is selling, all these other companies that are also working through that channel partner, they're also juicing the margins. Yeah. So there is this race to the bottom of who is willing to bleed the most to get these guys to talk about your thing.
Right. Gotcha.
Okay. I really don't like that either. And yeah, you've already mentioned some of the other conflicts where they come back to you. Yeah. It also, in some cases, and this is a big one, I think, for some startups, is it also creates exclusivity over the way in which you can sell your product. Right. So I remember with Centrifile, you thought about this. You're like, I hate these dealers. Yeah. let's go around them.
Yeah. Let's
and
sell
create
online.
A direct to consumer, direct to small business, sell online platform. And you didn't want to do it because you knew that would cause the inevitable shitstorm. As soon as you beat one of the dealers, because obviously you would, because you would be close to your cost rather than 7x your cost.
I would double my revenue and be still doing the same amount of work and probably fewer headaches. But guaranteed. I couldn't, I wasn't getting the people out there actually talking about it.
Yep.
Oh, you're buying a photocopier. Have you ever thought about paperless office, document management?
It's tough because I think the way that product would work would be through comping the photocopier dealership.
Yeah.
Like that's a challenging way to go to market, but it made sense for that particular business. But I think in your case, it put you at such a tremendous disadvantage.
So I'm trying to find a situation where like a reseller model is actually beneficial for everybody. Like everybody, like we've just given examples about terrible situations on reseller model stuff. I thought there was something when we were acquired where there was some way that there were these organizations that were on like...
I know exactly where you're going.
Okay, you tell the story because you know this story.
If you are actually this exists in Canada, but I'm going to use the US example. If you are a company that sells to public organizations, so that is universities, some medical groups, government, basically any level, you usually have to go through additional hoops to be able to sell to them. And one of those hoops is one way that you would do this, let's just say you were doing it the old fashioned way as a company, is you would go to something like the GSA for federal contracts. So the General Services Administration. Yeah. Thank you. They have this system called the GSA Advantage. These are all these vendors who have basically agreed to sweeping terms that benefit the government, but that make you as a vendor like a federally recognized vendor.
Right.
Hugely advantageous.
Right.
Because then when you go to pitch a university, you say, good news, we're on this federal contract system. You can benefit from that, even at a state level. That's why I picked federal. When we did this, I picked the federal level. Yeah. You can go on a state-by-state basis. There's what's the one in Texas? The Texas DIR, Department of something Information Resources or something. Yeah. And you could be listed on there. It's the same idea, but we just went federal. And so then when we could win deals a lot more easily, and this is the weird thing, if people think, oh, universities or whatever, these organizations, they got a credit card, they just swipe the credit card. You're wrong. The way this works is they go to the purchasing group. The purchasing group goes, who the hell is this? What's your tax information? Where are you located? Where are your staff? What's, blah, 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 blah. So once you do one of these big contracts, they get on one of these big contract systems. You avoid all that. For small companies, this isn't always tenable. Like I did this pretty late in our journey, because I was like, I wanted more US federal contracts. And so the way that you can get around this is there are companies that basically go and they are registered with all these various systems. Yeah. And you work with them downstream and say, hey, I'm trying to sell Sinkinson University in whatever state. And you are on that state's system or on the federal system. We are not. Can you generate a quote for us? We will give you 10% of the deal. You are just literally making a goddamn quote and sending it off to them because we are not on that system, but you are. Huh. And they can do that and they can secure the contract and you can be like another named party on that contract. No way. The whole thing just flows through this facade of verified.
But I love that
vendors.
Because it's like all you do is
just that's the business to be in.
Put your logo on this quote.
AT&T makes an unbelievable amount of money doing this.
Really?
Unbelievable. They have a huge vendor network, even just public safety. FirstNet. You heard of FirstNet?
Yeah.
It's like this telecom network for first responders.
Right. Yeah.
But part of that is also a vendor network
Yeah.
that is like you sign up with AT&T as like a dealer for whatever the hell it is you sell.
No
And
way.
you need quotes. And that was it. That was our extent of our exposure with AT&T to anything when we were at Rave. And it was just, hey, we need a quote for this thing and we're not on that contract system. Can you hook us up? And they'd be like, yeah, cool. For like 15%, we're happy to do it. And in some cases, this is like, could be $1 million deal. It's 150 grand. They're doing absolutely nothing.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So
we should start up a business that all we do is we have nothing and we just get on all these state contracts.
Bro, I love regulatory businesses.
Really?
Yeah. Well, like not on a personal level, but on a level of like making a ton of money with effectively like a captive audience.
Yeah.
So in that case, it's captive companies.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure what it's called. Somebody was telling me about this. This is another podcast. Not that you would listen to a different podcast, but there's another podcast where it's like for CPAs, they can listen to it and get their hours for their hourly for their annual CPA stuff. Like that is a genius,
brilliant,
friggin' idea.
Yeah.
Like, dude.
So at the end of the day, there is actually some ways that this reseller idea does work out, but I think you have to go into it with very clear eyes on what the reseller is going to do, which is almost nothing.
Almost nothing. Yeah. You
right?
have to have an entire infrastructure to support the reseller.
Yeah.
I think you can call it lots of different things. I effectively just call it like revenue operations.
Yeah.
You have people who are behind the process of educating. So this sales enablement is the skill or the process of getting other people to sell your stuff. You need to have that as a fully functional apparatus. Yeah. Here's the other thing I wanted to say. The other situation where you do see these relationships working often is in companies that have exhausted a lot of the market, like they've saturated their market through direct sales.
Right.
And there's just pockets of the market that they can't get access to easily. Yep. And that's when they start looking for channel partners. So when you are VMware, or by the way, conversely, there might also be a cost cutting benefit to if you have like an army of salespeople, but you can find a way to get to those markets because you have brand recognition.
Right.
People want to buy VMware.
Yeah.
You barely have to market. You don't need a salesperson to even demo that anymore because everybody knows what it is. Hey, there's a good cost benefit there probably too.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, you have to have just like a lot of brand leverage that a small company does not have.
Yeah.
And you miss out again on so much valuable market insight. Like you must, I can't stress this enough. You must do founder-led sales to start your business.
Yeah.
And honestly, that carries through the whole thing.
Yeah.
Like all the way. I mean, I was selling AppArmor to Rave in the end. If you want to think of it that way too. So
yeah. Well, resellers, I tried my best to come up with some pros, but there aren't a ton.
It can work in very specific circumstances for large companies.
Yeah.
I think like Oracle and those ones too do a lot of that. Like that's not unusual, but it's just, I think about, what was that single wire? Remember those guys? Informicast.
Yeah,
okay, so this is a niche one. These guys are in emergency notification. They were all through that, and they actually did get success doing that. But their apparatus, their entire sales effort was through these dealers, and it was just getting these guys to sell.
Yeah,
and they had a ton of them signed up.
Yeah. Do you remember there was single wire and there was also signal wire?
No, I don't.
There was another competitor that was
that.
like almost the same name.
Nice.
Yeah, I don't know how that
happened.
Remember
so here's a fun fact for the folks at home. There were two AppArmors. There was the AppArmor, the Linux-based security thing in Europe, and then there was us in North America, and we had fun times with them. We see you. So was it Seuss? We see you, Dr. Seuss. That was their company anyway.
Yeah.
Water under the bridge.
So at the end of the day, I feel like there's 1,000 other things I want to do before signing up.
Well, okay. Can I back out one more thing?
Okay.
So I don't want to be done yet. I have a few. I love this topic. I love sales topics.
Sure.
I think markets where you also need an integrator, it can make a lot of sense. So what do I mean by
somebody to turn a wrench or
turn a wrench?
Yeah.
If you have a hardware focused solution, now the funny thing is because your solution, what you mentioned, the photocopiers and stuff, kind of has the signals of that. So I'm not sure where the nuance lies here, but there are some like let's say you sell camera software, like I'm going to say in public safety because what I know. So setting up security cameras in a location, somebody ultimately needs to put that up.
Right.
You will have relationships with integrators, these people who are these other companies that their job is to go and install the cameras. They can be very valuable sales channels because they have existing relationships with the customers, with these customers in an area where they've already done some of this install, perhaps for even for competitors.
Yeah.
So it is kind of a weird zone, but it is kind of like, hey, that makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah.
If you can get the people who are installing it and have those relationships to also talk about your product a little bit more, that can be helpful.
Yeah. Like I bought that cable machine for my home gym, and
Yeah.
I bought it through like a reseller, and that manufacturer of that fitness equipment used that reseller because it's like too heavy. Like the customer can't do the installation on their own. And that makes sense that there's a reseller network there. But yeah,
historically car dealerships, right? Like car dealerships are probably an example of an unbelievably successful channel partnership where it's all franchised, like dealership locations. People hate going to car dealerships.
I do hate going to
I do too. And you can see the disruption of that because the experience got so terrible for end users.
Yeah.
But car dealerships, I don't know if do you know the like financials behind car dealerships? They're fucking crazy. They make like hundreds of millions a year. Like some really big car dealerships in like major cities.
I thought they didn't do that.
No, they do crazy. So I think that's really like most markets.
Sales or profit, like revenue or profit?
Revenue, top line.
Yeah, but profit number I think is like the
I don't know.
margins are razor thin.
Probably because you have to buy a lot of inventory and
and I feel like the manufacturer is like
and I don't think I think if the car manufacturers could go straight to the market they would, but they're so invested in this approach because they started in the year like 1910. You know what I mean? Like whereas then Tesla shows up and they're going straight to consumer. I think in a way that's where aside from the other we're diverting here from the technological gap between like the old car manufacturers and the sort of the new ones,
like the Teslas,
is like
Rivians
this direct to consumer model. I think will be extremely disruptive to the GMs of the world.
I think that's coming.
I think so too. I don't think that's
especially like EVs just don't need the service that they used to. Like
I think there's there's a changing mechanical landscape too. Which is probably going to be problematic for a lot of other small businesses that work sort of on the sides of these things. Anyway, I digress. I think there are circumstances where it can work, but for the purposes of us and our audience today, like folks, if you can avoid it, you should avoid it. Like go straight to market.
Being software guys, it didn't work.
Absolutely don't do it with software.
Yeah.
So. If you can avoid it, for the love of God, even if you do direct sales for a while and you find it's not working for you and you want to do channel, that's cool. But you need to make the effort first of going direct to market so you can understand customer objections. Why you need to know why you can't do direct.
Yeah, 1,000% agree.
Right? Like if you just go straight to the dealers, man, you're not going to learn anything. And by the way, the dealers are going to tell you whatever you want to hear because they want more products that they can sell, like just to have more arrows in their quiver. But they're not necessarily going to do it, or they're going to do it really poorly. It's just my hot take on this. So
yeah. Cool.
Yeah, this episode's brought to you by the Dealerships Association of Canada. Anyway, so all right. Cool. Pod complete. Good job, man.
All right.
See you later.
Start it up. Let's get it rolling. Big ideas, money folding. Hustle smart, dream so wide. Turn that grind into a joyride.